Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel, or if you're new here, hello, my name is Alivia Brown and I am currently a fourth year undergraduate student at UCLA studying anthropology, and today we are obviously going to be talking about the difference between anthropology and psychology. Okay, so I have my laptop and the two definitions right here. So anthropology is the study of human societies and cultures and their development, while psychology is the scientific study of the human mind and its functions, especially those affecting behavior in a given context. So there's a lot going on here, but I think at their core, there's one main difference between anthropology and psychology, and that is that anthropology is generally the study of cultures, whereas psychology is the study of the human mind. Now, before I progress into the big similarities and differences between psychology and anthropology, I want to make a quick note that when I talk about anthropology during this video today, I am more specifically referring to cultural anthropology, and if you're not familiar with the branches of anthropology, that's okay, we're going to touch on that in a little bit, but I just want to throw that in here before we progress. So now let's talk about the similarities between anthropology and psychology. Now, the first big similarity is that psychology and anthropology are both human sciences. So these two fields of study are looking to understand humans at their very core and why we act the way we act. Now, this similarity brings me really smoothly into the next one, and that is that psychology and anthropology are both looking to understand human behavior. So why do you act in this way in a certain context, or why do we talk to the principal of our school different than we might talk to our peers? All these things fall into this general category of understanding human behavior that both psychology and anthropology are looking to understand. And finally, the last main similarity that I have is that both anthropology and psychology occupy this intersection between social science and science. Now, I think it rings true that for many things, many areas of study, there's this fine line between STEM topics and social science topics. However, anthropology and psychology kind of walk this line and have elements of both. So now that you understand the similarities between psychology and anthropology, we can begin to dive into those differences that will really allow you to distinguish between these two fields and maybe even decide which one you would want to study. Now, the first main difference is that while anthropologists are looking to understand humans and our behavior and our problems, psychologists are actually looking to help people with their problems. So one big instance of this, big example of this, is psychologists being used to help treat mental health. So if you have a problem that you're struggling with, you would never go to an anthropologist to help you work through this issue that you're having. You would go to a psychologist because they have this deep understanding of not only the human mind, but how to help you through things that you might be dealing with. So the big thing here is this idea of treatment versus a general understanding. Hand in hand with this idea as well is that psychologists are looking to understand humans in this very one-on-one individualized way, whereas anthropologists tend to be looking at an entire culture or an entire group of people. Now, moving on to the next difference, anthropology has four main subfields, while psychology has many. The four main subfields of anthropology are archaeology, linguistics, culture, and biology. However, if we're looking at psychology, you have clinical psychology, educational psychology, evolutionary psychology, developmental psychology. Now, both anthropology and psychology are incredibly broad. This should not be ignored in any respect, but the way that they're broken up and therefore the way that they approach understanding humans are both very different, and that has a lot to do with the way that these subfields are created. Now, this brings me very smoothly into my next difference, and that is that anthropology is a very holistic approach to understanding humans, where on the other hand, psychology is a lot more specific in the way that we understand people and our behavior. And the way that we can understand that is actually through the disciplines of anthropology. So if you look at them all together, biology, culture, linguistics, and archaeology, those things are so different and so expansive, and altogether they allow us to understand people. There's this historical element, there is this biological element, there is a cultural element, language element, and you put these all together and that gives you a very holistic picture of humans. However, psychology, if we look back at those disciplines, think about how those are set up. Clinical psychology, developmental psychology, social psychology, evolutionary psychology. You have like a describing word and then literally the word psychology, which is all about understanding the human mind. So you have this very, very specific way of understanding human beings that is bound to our mind and our brain function and the physiological things that are happening in our brain. Now, the final difference that I'm going to be talking about today is this idea of proximate versus ultimate explanations for things. And if you aren't familiar with these two topics or concepts of it's totally fine. I'm going to explain it. Approximate explanation for something is this idea that you're using a relatively short amount of time to explain a certain behavior, for example. So maybe if you are feeling sick today, you could look back on what you did this week or even throughout the history of your own life and say, what are things that I have done that would have made me vulnerable to get sick? Maybe you went out to a party, or maybe you didn't eat very healthy, or maybe you have not eaten healthy your entire life. And using those facts to understand why you might be sick today is approximate explanation for something. However, there's another way to explain behavior, and that is known as an ultimate explanation. And an ultimate explanation is otherwise known as an evolutionary explanation. And this goes back hundreds of thousands of years as to understand why you were sick today, which might sound kind of wild at first if you don't have a lot of experience with evolutionary biology, but if you think about it, it's actually really interesting. So let's say you caught some virus, right? And for you to get to where you are today, a lot of your ancestors had to survive, right? But at the same time, this virus had to survive for a really long time. And chances are we co-evolved with this virus side by side, and the way that we evolved and interacted with this virus over the course of many years actually impacts how vulnerable you were to getting that virus today. So again, it sounds big and scary, but it's actually a really wonderful way to look at things and look to explain things. And actually, psychology and anthropology tend to fall in one category or the other when it comes to proximate and ultimate explanations. Psychology looks more at proximate explanations for things. What happened this week? Why do you think these events led to you feeling this way? Versus anthropology, which actually tends to take an ultimate approach for things. Now, really quick, I have shifted a little bit from this cultural undertone of anthropology to biological anthropology. Now, biological anthropology is extremely closely related to evolutionary biology, and so as I put these two disciplines in boxes, please know that I have shifted into biological anthropology. But anthropology looks at these ultimate timelines, these really, really large timescales to help explain how you might have gotten to where you are today. All of this is to say, psychology tends to be more proximate and anthropology tends to be more ultimate. But there are always exceptions in life, and that will be my final point as we continue throughout this video. Now, the final thing that I want to leave you with as you end this video on the differences between psychology and anthropology is that as academia grows and changes today, fields are bleeding into each other like they never have before. There are elements of anthropology in psychology, and there are elements of psychology in anthropology, which is just crazy to think about and so exciting, because if you think about it, the more we allow ourselves to pull information from all over the board, the more information we're actually allowing ourselves access to, and more research and more data. And you guys know more data means it's more reliable, and that's just an overall good thing. Point being, we cannot 100% disentangle these two fields, but I have tried my best to do that for you today, and I hope you enjoyed this video. I will of course have all my sources linked down below. And finally, if you are a psychology major or an anthropology major, or you just know a lot about these two things, please leave more information in the comment section down below. If you think I missed anything, any big differences, similarities, whatever it is your heart and mind tell you, please leave those in the comment section down below. And yes, I think that is all I have to say this week. I hope everyone is doing fantastic, and I will see you guys all next Sunday. All right, bye you guys.